July 8, 1853, U.S. Commodore Matthew C. Perry had arrived in Tokyo Bay, authorized by U.S. President Millard Fillmore. Representing the United States, Commodore Perry demanded that Japan open its port to trade once again. Awed at the power of this Western convoy, the Bakufu, or the Shogunate, the ruling party of Japan at the time, had no choice but to accept the terms. This ended the Sakakoku, the isolationist doctrine that had been in place for 250 years. The Japanese people realized their need to modernize, with important figures such as Shumazu Nariakira stating, "If we take the initiative, we can dominate. If we do not, we will be dominated." The westernization of Japan had severe consequences. The end of the Japanese feudal system, the fall of the Tokugawa shogunate, and the abolition of the samurai. The Tokugawa shogunate was formed in 1603 due to the violent Sengoku period in Japan, or the Warring States. The shogunate was established and employed isolationist and anti-Christian doctrine to thwart Western ideas. This government was decentralized, with daimyos, or feudal lords, having near complete control over their own estates. The Americans had arrived in a period of economic stagnation, famine, and class reorganization. Due to the concessions being made, the shogunate looked very weak, causing political divisions between the daimyo of Japan. In 1866, the Satsuma-Choshu alliance between the Satsuma and Choshu domains was formed in support of returning Japan to imperial rule to strengthen it against outsiders. At the time, the Japanese emperor was Komi, but due to his death on January 3, 1867, the Emperor Meiji rose to power, and was the emperor for the entirety of this imperial period, hence the name the Meiji Restoration. The current Tokugawa shogun, Yoshinobu, abdicated on November 9, 1867, putting his prerogatives at the emperor's disposal. This was the restoration, or Taisei Houkan, that everyone was hoping for, but it was official with Emperor Meiji's formal declaration, completely stripping Yoshinobu of his official power. However, the shogun's influence was still in place, and the Boshin War commenced to finally rid Japan of the ex-shogun's army. The Boshin War began with the Battle of Toba Fushimi in May of 1868, when Tokugawa Yoshinobu launched an attack on the emperor's court in Kyoto. The shogunate forces contained a powerful navy with 8 steam warships and an army numbered at 15,000. The shogun was also aided by the French, who sent French military advisors to train the shogunate armies. The imperial forces, consisting of samurai from the Choshu and Satsuma domains, were outnumbered 3 to 1. However, they had more modernized weapons and equipment, largely thanks to the actions of Britain to counteract French involvement. The imperial forces' weapons include the mini rifle, Armstrong artillery, and even some Gatling guns, versus the lesser smoothbore muskets used by the shogun's forces, which fired at a much slower rate. As the Battle of Toba Fushimi went on, more and more daimyos defected to the imperial court, which tilted the military balance in favor of the imperial side. Eventually, the shogunate forces would be forced to retreat and Yoshinobu would flee to Edo. Saigo Takamori would lead the imperial forces north, winning battle after battle, until eventually surrounding Edo, leading to the shogun's unconditional surrender in May of 1868. Yoshinobu would be stripped of all his titles, land, and power, and was placed under house arrest for a brief period of time until being released to retire in Shizukawa, where he would spend the rest of his days. Even after the shogun's surrender, a few northern daimyos would resist and refuse to capitulate, most notably from the regions of Sendai, Aizu, and Nagakawa. These daimyos would form a coalition totaling 50,000 troops. Despite inflicting high losses on the imperial armies, the coalition would crumble on October 12, 1868. The remaining remnants of those loyal to the Tokugawa shogunate would move further north to Hokkaido and form the short-lived Republic of Ezo, Japan's only ever republic. However, after pressure from the imperial navy, the leaders of the Ezo Republic would surrender and officially recognize Emperor Meiji's rule on June 27, 1869, ending the Boshin War. In the end, about 120,000 men were mobilized, with over 13,200 casualties occurring. The emperor's residence would be transferred from Kyoto to Edo, which would later be named Tokyo, beginning the Meiji period. After the overthrow of the Tokugawa shogunate, the form of government shifted to an oligarchy consisting mostly of leaders from the Satsuma and Choshu provinces. The Meiji oligarchy abolished the divisions of class in society, and little by little weakened the samurai class. This led to a series of riots from angry samurai, eventually building up to a full-on rebellion, also known as the Satsuma Rebellion. The siege of Kumamoto Castle began on February 14th. The Satsuma forces crossed into Kumamoto Prefecture with the intent to siege Kumamoto Castle. Major General Tani Titiki was the commandant of Kumamoto Castle at the time. On February 19th, the Kumamoto Castle opened fire on the Satsuma units led by Saigo. However, Saigo was ready, having previously destroyed Kumamoto warehouses, weakening their supplies. On the night of April 8th, a small group from Kumamoto Castle had broken enemy lines to make way for newer supplies, which bought them enough time for reinforcements to arrive, resulting in the flight of the Satsuma forces on April 12th. The Imperial forces then started the siege of the city of Mianhara on March 19th, with some reinforcements continued and attacking from the rear, driving the Satsuma army back, resulting in a victory for the Imperial forces, with both sides seeing approximately 4,000 killed or wounded. Next came the retreat from Kumamoto. With both sides severely depleted, the fighting was suspended for several weeks. Afterwards, Saigo had retreated on Miyazaki and left multiple groups of samurai behind to conduct guerrilla attacks from the hills. On July 24th, Saigo had been forced out of multiple locations and then into a pincer attack by the Imperials. He barely escaped encirclement with only 3,000 samurai and little to no firearms or artillery. The surviving samurai rebels had their stand atop Mount Endoke and were soon surrounded 7-1, resulting in many either surrendering or committing seppuku. In the final battle of Shirayama in the Satsuma Rebellion, Saigo was outnumbered 60-1, but he did not leave anything to chance, still proceeding. General Yamagata was ready to end this. The general had ordered a frontal assault on September 24th, 1877, leaving very few Satsuma samurai left and Saigo dead. The rest of the samurai charged to their deaths, ending the Satsuma Rebellion. After the rebellion, many Japanese samurais found employment in the government bureaucracy, despite their decline in power and social status. The oligarchs started to implement land reform in order to legitimize the tenancy system. Japan's military started to grow in power as a result of all the reforms, as well as mass military conscription. Social change was also enforced. One such change was the establishment of the standard language. The Meiji Restoration caused them to adapt Enlightenment ideas of popular education, which increased the amount of skilled workers in Japan. The skilled workers significantly improved Japanese industrial growth with the massive increase in production and infrastructure. In the end, the Meiji Restoration brought Western ideas to feudal Japan, ending a centuries-old samurai regime. I'm Sriram.
I'm Narain.
I'm Adam.
I'm Ben.
I'm Yusuf.
And this is OverCubified. Thank you for listening.